So, Nilanjana ji, if you're ready.
Yeah, I'll just share my screen. I have very short PPT.
Go ahead, unmute yourself.
Sorry. So it's very much related to what Dr. Padma talked about today, and it's basically the extension of my last work, last impact evaluation in Bihar. What I wanted, like as a part of this course, I have learned a lot of these theories and feminist, because on the job I have done a lot of gender-based violence related evaluation. So what I wanted to look into how different in different contexts, different kind of models, whether there is a similarity across what works and what did not work. So I'm doing some literature review and also extending the like research evaluation which I have been doing for like my last project. So the title is like right now it's a very basic like I'm looking into how gender integration programming in livelihood programs can have potential to reduce gender-based violence. But it's not moving. Okay. So Dr. Padma has already set the tone and will not go much into the details, but we know that gender-based violence and based on NFHS, the more like there are in India is almost one third women have experienced some kind of physical violence. I have not put into the emotional and sexual violence, but when it actually, if we could have any violence related any studies particularly focused, but NFHS was not designed for that. So we always believe that this is an underestimate. So at least one third or more women have been experienced these kind of physical, these are just intimate partner violence. So, and if you look at, there are some states like Karnataka, Tamil Nadu from southern part, particularly Bihar from our northern belt, are noted like they have more than 40% of intimate partner violence reported. But when it comes to formal support seeking, there is hardly any 2 to 3% goes for formal support seeking. I know Dr. Padma noted that around 14% women take some kind of support, but it's many times it's like a informal support or taking a counseling from the neighbor or friend, but at least they took support. And when it comes to the system level support, it's really very low. So the low utilization support mechanism due to this limited is particularly because of the limited awareness, rights, limited awareness about rights, protection, and there is like interest these societal norms and fear of consequences, particularly the backlash and like family discord. So women don't come out and talk about they have been suffering and they wanted to deal it in a subtle way. So in that sense, Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana in 2016, they have come up with these gender integration guidelines, which talks about how at system level from like including your staff, including at different level of cadres, if the system has to be sensitized for each level so that it can become more sensitive towards understanding and examining, like taking up early warnings or recognizing violence around their community, particularly at cadre level. So this, like if we go through like how SHGs have emerged, so it's more than like at least since 1985, SHGs have been in India. And over the period of time, the women movement and self-help group movements have actually been very, came out very strongly about the economic empowerment. But when it comes to how economic empowerment has translated into social empowerment, there are limited evidences. even the women who have economically empowered or they could take livelihood jobs, their control over their resources, how they loan, how they can actually take decision about their loan disbursement, their money utilization of their money, their decision making is really questioned. So after this NRLM guidelines, a lot of states have started piloting it in a different started adopting these models. So yeah, what I am going to look into our study is looking at in Bihar, this pilot has been done in 3 districts, Patna, Muzaffarpur and Nalanda, and with one of the development partner. And in since 2021 to 23, they have been training. They trained around 200 senior and mid-level staff members. They created gender resource centers, 15 gender resource centers at like lower than block level. CLF, it is one there in SHG model. There are at the lowest entity is SHG, and so these are 10-15 women in one group at village level. Then at a lot of SHGs come together and they form village organizations. And these village organization at next level, they form, like their representative forms a cluster level federations. So at cluster level federation level, it is you can say that it's around the block level or just below the block. It could be possible that there will be 1 or 2 blocks in CLF level. So they've created 15 gender resource centers and provided gender training across 1300 GBK staff members plus CBO members and various cadre level. So it has been repeated in 2 years. They did a lot of trainings. As a research partner, we documented a lot of learnings, but for this paper, I have some data already collected, which I wanted to utilize to understand whether at all these system level trainings, how like a CBO members who is also part of a community where these these are all these community or cadre level women, they are actually part of the villages. They can be taken as a proxy for community women. So whether if there has been some change in their attitude, the possibility is that they are the one who can bring they can be carrier of information to the other village women or the members of women who are because Bihar has a very high level of SHG saturation. So there is a chances that they will cater the other victims in their vicinity. So we, as a researcher, I wanted to understand whether these gender sensitization trainings have actually transformed their attitudes, particularly the attitudes which are discussing towards today, talking about there has been normalization of violence or understanding that small beating, serious like a thappad, and these have been normalized. And FHS also asked few questions, but we have a very detailed questions around understanding the controlling behavior, understanding gender role attitude. So these scales will have been used, and I would like to use them and see whether over period of time, we have 2 point of data. So we will review that whether there has been a change in their behavior and attitudes around that. And the other thing which I would like to understand is the preventive or laws related understanding, whether it has improved or not. If their understanding about support system, where they can go in case of violence, or how they can support a survivor, if that has been improved, that's a one positive indicator which we would like to understand whether these gender integration programming can change or not. So the study, this is the study design. I will lay it out in detail in the paper. It was a quasi-experimental design. We have a control area, so that's we can measure what can be attributed to the program, and we also have a lot of qualitative data to supplement. So I will try to use both quantitative as qualitative data. These are some key indicators which I was talking about, that looking at gender role attitude, controlling behavior of men, like attitude around household and work roles. There are several other indicators which I could not list here, but few GBV support and legal provisions like a one-stop center, women's helpline, whether they have been aware of Domestic Violence Act, POSH Acts. So these questions have been laid out at both baseline and endline, and we try to understand whether they have, because of the gender training or because in training also they have been talking about all these issues. So if their awareness has improved or not. Other than that, which I was talking about today with Dr. Padma, there are several other states which have been actually doing a lot of like at similar time or sometime back in 2000 after 2016, states have adopted this model and they have been testing whether it has how it worked in their situation. So as a next step, what I am going to do, I will compare different states like you and see for one or two indicators how their results have been different and how in in a different context whether this model has worked or not. So that could be one contribution. I thought it will be important to understand because India is itself is a very like states are different and we need to understand ki, it's possible that Bihar, something which works in Bihar may not be possibly similar to work in Karnataka or Tamil Nadu. So there are several models which have been documented and like in Odisha, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, MP. So I will review those and add these as a supplementary support for this study. So I will stop here and I will ask Dr. Vibhuti to give me some suggestions. Thank you.
Yeah. Are you going to include the case studies?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you going to include the case studies?
Yes, ma'am. I was just thinking to add few case studies and understand ki, in a vis-a-vis Bihar model, how they are different and whether there has been some small differences across these models or not. Although the NRLM guidelines are very clear, like gender desk, gender forums, and integration, but whether they have been implemented similarly across different states. So if I have all the public documented, I'm reviewing all the publicly available reports and support the analysis.
It's very, very comprehensive.
So I wanted to do a research paper soon.
That's all. Yeah, that's right. You can also get it published in a peer literature. But this will be for the anthology. What you are submitting is an essay to the anthology.
Ma'am, wherever you consider, I really don't know.
Because that IMPRI brings out, anthology on that is also I explained. And then you can come up with it because you can also have a 7,000-8,000 word actual like detailed research paper which can go.
I have a small draft. I can like submit it for review.
But the anthology, the word limit is 3,500 to 5,000.
Okay, 3,500 to 5,000.
Yeah, that's
it's sure. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you, Nilanjana ji. Next, we'll move forward, and I welcome Adreja ji to please present.
Yes, so my PPT will be really very short and simple. My entire presentation is based on the fact that how the current international conflict in Gaza, Palestine, and Ukraine is driving a real foreign policy vis-a-vis the feminist foreign policy. So first we start from the understanding of the realpolitik as a theory, where the Prince by Machiavelli has been taken as the head start for defining realism, and it has been projected as a masculine format to describe that the head of the family is usually the male person. So the realist notions of state power, state interest, and dogmatic extensions of male identity is equal, or it's synonymous to the primary diplomatic relations that the states make with each other. And in contrast to it, feminist foreign policy is new, accepted by few countries, where gender is to be brought within the mainstream foreign policy consideration only after it's not a binary thing, yes or no thing. It's only after much deliberation, discussion, and several stakeholders understanding. So the both the realist foreign policy and the feminist foreign policy, they are in opposition and they're never in tandem, because certain female leadership has also been in studies shown that they have to exhibit male qualities, because otherwise the their attitude will be taken as a political suicide if they do not exhibit the power and the range occupied by the masculine domain as such. So currently the entire international politics is defined by how US, Russia is interacting with each other vis-a-vis the conflicts that Israel and Ukraine is facing with their own neighbors, that is Gaza and Palestine. So the stage is now set for a rebound effect of realism in international politics. So the net effect of this on gender is that Ukraine's years of women's empowerment has gone down with a 36% rise in gender-based violence since 2023, and Israel has deployed sexual reproductive violence to perpetrate their war and conflict strategies in the Palestine conflict, which is very alarming given the fact that it's already a conflict-torn zone, and the peacemakers and the peace builders are already working under scarce resource conditions. So the use of force in foreign conflicts, it's resort to the adoption of the subtraction of feminist standards in armed forces to create a fear psychosis. And a fear psychosis is usually the most important propaganda to protract war or conflict strategies. So when we study the culture of violence by Johan Galtung, who is one of the main protagonists of peace and peace theory, so we see that his cornerstones of behavior, attitude, and contradictions, these three are the cornerstones that manifest through unequal power distribution, use of fear as an attitude, and absence of negotiation and propagation of violence. These are the ways in which culture of fear is protracted to include gender violence and normalize gender violence during wartime and conflict strategies. In this image, we can see that a person in Beirut refugee camp. She is a mother of 3 children. She has been displaced 4 times and have lost 10 family members, and yet she's trying to support the uh, groups in Palestine and Gaza. And the Indian case of gender-based violence over here, post 2022, we can see the overall Sept index stood at 65% as per the National Annual Report and Index on Women in 2025. And it has post-COVID, the NCRB data shows that there has been almost a 12% rise in female violence, though we do not still have the data on the post-international conflict areas, which was to be shared by NCRB, which is not yet shared anywhere on any platform, that after 2023, what has been the status of the gender-based violence in India. So the lack of feminist standards, it's quite pronounced in Indian foreign policy. Whether we see in the BRICS 2025 or the Lok Sabha winter session, we see whenever the question of Israel-Palestine or the question of Ukraine is raised, and the questions are made, the questions are primarily made in terms of diplomatic relations, And there is no mention of women, the culture of gender violence, or the status of women in these cases. And we tend to omit the things relating to women, relating to feminism, and there is no clear feminist dialogue during diplomatic overtures. So the post-conflict feminist foreign policy stands to be very problematic, and it has quite certain caveats. The 3 years of conflict has rolled back years of Ukraine's efforts to make gender inclusive choices. By 2024, only 48% of women are employed compared to 71% of male population in Ukraine. Despite the challenges, the good things are women are leading areas in demining, transportation, security. Women Peace and Humanitarian Fund and UN Women has supported over 180,000 women so far, and they are looking forward to more humanitarian assistance, participation in peace process for women for building post-conflict state building. And finally, there is a direct rise in the number of survivors seeking help in Gaza despite a severe shortage of electric sources. And UN Gaza Central Deir el-Bahr reports that they continue rescue operations through phone calls. The most important factor in determining a post-conflict feminist foreign policy is how women, despite their challenges, despite being displaced, despite facing their own personal loss, they are salvaging the other people through empathy, and they are not shying away from helping people just because they have been on the receiving end. So it clearly brings out that the feminist urge of empathizing has been relegated and not brought or not discussed so far in the foreign policy aspect, and which is very essential when we are building the post conflict state, especially because the countries with feminist foreign policy as their mainstream, they have also failed to adhere to sexual and reproductive health rights of women in terms of adequate resource allocation. So the safe spaces in Gaza, Ukraine, the way the women, the peace builders, they're working, they should be the starting points for the feminist approach to foreign policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Adria, for making such a politically sharp and very analytically rigorous presentation. It's a very, very complex topic that you have interwoven. I would just like you to include how the military industrial complexes are created by the armament industry and the whole arms trade, who are the ones who are producing and how they are distributing. So that is very important. India, even in G20, the women-led development was the slogan, but we did not see any kind of foreign policy or diplomatic discourses in which women had any say. And currently, the relationship with Taliban, with how many nation states are doing with it, which has done a complete gross violation of women's rights, so much so that after 600 girls can't even study, they can't have any public life. So I think these are also, so it's Gaza, Ukraine important, but at the same time, what domestic policies of some of the countries have, and why don't they have a national action plan? Nepal has a national action plan.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, in my article, I will like to discuss the problems and the limitations of CEDAW Act, the geopolitical limits, and I would also like to show some statistics which I have collected personally regarding the awareness of international conflict among people who I have surveyed in a random basis. So that too will be added, which is
Well,
not
the
included in
grassroots
the
experience is how even I just returned from Calicut, and they had such a huge demonstration just to read the names of children who have been killed. In Bombay, almost every second or third day, the Bombay Union of Journalists, they organize meetings, they are making people aware, and they are also reading the list of over 200 journalists who have been killed. So I think this kind of efforts which are happening, And also the today's news about people, the no king demonstration, no, and how Trump, the billionaire of America, has assured Trump that after the closure, they are ready to pump in as much money as he wants, no, for suppressing the
Exactly.
different business. So now the polarization has now become very sharp globally. It's not limited to one location, but it has now become a global discourse, and polarization is also global. So the question of people's power and to what, how to respond to the global elite, which is so much into murderous, you know.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
It's very good. Everybody see this. And you have references and all.
Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Atreja ji. Next, I would like to invite Antara ji to please begin with her presentation.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, too. What is
Uh,
the title of? I think you'll have to bring GBV, no, in the title, Andrea.
Yes, I will. I have submitted the abstract, and I do not remember exactly what I had written as the title, but I will include GBV
Yes,
in
yes, I have read that.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Adrija, you have to close your presentation and I can go ahead then if you can.
Yeah, you'll have to mention.
Uh,
Stop sharing.
Stop sharing.
Or shall I replace it? I think it'll automatically.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, you can replace it.
Okay, okay. Um, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so my topic, I mean, I've kept the PPT very simple, and this is still work in progress. So I'd like to get inputs from everyone as to how I can strengthen it. I have taken, so this is my working title, Narrative Building by Media and Women in Assam. Um, the reason why I have used media as a tool is because, one second. Is because nationally India is right now the kind of media consumption that's happening. Statistically, 71% of Indians are using online platforms for news consumption, and out of that, 45% are sharing news only through social media and emails. And some of the most used platforms are YouTube, WhatsApp, Facebook, and Instagram. The reason why these statistics are important is because it's going to it essentially indicates that a huge chunk of our population is using this as a way to understand what's happening in India and of course globally, but also at a regional level. It becomes an agent for a lot of us to build perceptions, understand certain worldviews, and also understand what's happening in terms of any issue, including gender-based violence. And a human rights one, of course, and then comes gender-based violence. So it really becomes, media really becomes, and all forms of media, and I refer to both print media and social media and digital media platforms. They have this power to right now reconstruct the way we are understanding the different events that are happening in our country and also at a regional level. My objective is the objective of doing this reflective essay. So I have planned to do a reflective essay, and this essay is essentially to understand how media can be, how media builds narratives. So there are two things I'm looking at. One is really how media builds narratives about women. And so initially, when I submitted my abstract, I said women in distress and women facing gender-based violence. But here I have kept it kept as women because when I was doing the secondary literature, I wouldn't say review per se because that is very extensive. I would say when I was going through the secondary literature or the literature available online, I realized that media
media doesn't even have to go to an extent to address violence against women, but even to talk about the position of women, the way they are defining it, the way they are constructing it, the way they are building the um, concepts in their reportage itself indicates to a lot of stereotypes, a lot of patriarchal stereotypes and biases. So I would like to, through my reflective essay, I would like to understand and decode that through the different secondary literature that I am reading. And the second is the language that they're using. So I have noticed in some of the cases that I have taken, in one of the cases I noticed the way language is used. One is it blames the victim. So it's always victim blaming. The language is always victim blaming. That is one level of it. But the second level of how language is used to kind of, how language is used as a systemic level. So, for example, when authorities have to respond to a gender-based violence or violence against women issue, the way they respond to it, the language they use in itself, the language they use is itself very gender insensitive. It is almost like, no, we gender blind. So let me put it that way. It almost is gender blind, and I'm going to talk about this in the paper that I am writing. So I am picking up newspaper clippings where different judicial department personnel have spoken of certain issues in a certain way, and how that can lead to further vulnerability for a woman. So that is my intention. The objective is really these two. Uh, Context is really, one is, of course, I come from Assam, so it's very personal to me because I have seen how that region, the demography, and also the how the demography has changed and how media has come in a huge way. 10 years ago or 9.5 years ago, when I was in Assam, I didn't see a lot of usage of media unless it is a 7 p.m. or a 7 a.m. news reporting that happens, or the news channel broadcasting that happens. But now, in the last few years, I've seen the way media has used different features of social and digital media that is only reinforcing different forms of violence against women. Statistically, Assam records the highest rate of crime against women in India, and this is for the fifth consecutive year. So it is alarming in many ways. In 2021 alone, 12,831 rape cases have been registered, and 897 dowry deaths have been registered. This is statistics. Now, in terms of how journalists how journalists have built their or how what is the attitude of journalists and the media, the media industry, I would say. One insight to it is this excerpt. So I was looking at different digital media platforms. One of it is Reddit, and in Reddit I came across this community where they were talking about different forms of violence and the gendered attitude the media industry has. So it goes like this. I was at a movie premiere in Guwahati, and several reporters from well known TV news channels were standing right in front of me. He excitedly showed him some pictures on his phone, photos of a YouTuber who was there just sitting and wearing a jumpsuit, with a slight bit of cleavage showing. The first reporter, clearly pleased with himself, zoomed in on the picture, took a screenshot, and sent it to someone else on WhatsApp. The second reporter praised him for managing to take the photo without the YouTuber knowing and from an angle that exaggerated her cleavage. In his words, great job. You got the angle just right, taking it from above. This, of course, indicates to one is his very gendered and not just gendered, a very pervert approach to someone who who doesn't even know that her picture is taken. But also it shows the concept, it shows the phenomena of voyeurism and non-consensual acts that are happening. So in my entire reflective essay, I want to bring out these nuances of how consent and consent is violated, someone's privacy is violated, voyeurism is in practice without even we unintentionally, without even we noticing it very clearly. So I want to bring out these nuances. The cases I have that the cases that I'm working on are three cases. One is the Guwahati molestation case 2012. This was a very uh, um, uh, uh, widely covered incident, even nationally, uh, because the because of the nature in which it happened. So there was this particular young girl who stepped out of a pub, and about over 15 to 16 men molested her, sexually assaulted her in the public. What was further alarming and disturbing was that one journalist had captured an entire act in his phone and circulated it and invited other men to join in the act. So what I am doing in this case is I am trying to read all the reports that are being written, both from a journalistic point of view and also from a judicial aspect as well. Like, how have the judicial system responded to it, to see how gender responsive was this, or was it really gender responsive at all? So I want to understand that from the first case. Witch hunting is a phenomena that has been going on in Assam for decades now, and it really reflects power relations, dismantling the patriarchic power, the conception of patriarchic power, and what it does to a woman, and how it can push women to a margin. So that is what I'm hoping to achieve. I mean, hoping to unravel in this particular case. I haven't yet delved and completely in this phenomena. I mean, in this case, as I'm writing the essay, but I'm hoping to do it in the next 1 week. This third case is really about festival as a site of sexual harassment in college campuses, and more specifically Guwahati University. I have studied in Guwahati University, and I know the different festivals that they celebrate, and the the exaggeration of the same. Uh, Without any judgment, I know that there is a lot of there's a lot of male gaze in it. When when I was a Guwahati University student, I have myself observed a lot of subtle forms of sexual harassment happening around the campus, which a lot of women now, when I'm doing the interviews with some of the students, they say it's fine because we can't talk about it. So the normalization of the one is the culture of silence, and the second is the normalization of subtle forms of violence by women, is something that I want to deconstruct and understand why that is so. To give you a snippet, I had interviewed 2, 3 students, the current students of Guwahati University, more specifically from the Women's Studies department. And one of the things they say is, I can share it in the later this thing, but I think I can share it here also. So one of the things they say is that they cannot get out of this. Um, it's like a loop. If you want to speak up about it, there's a lot at stake. There is their course is at stake, their survival in the campus is at stake, because the 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 way the I don't know how to explain the male gaze in the campus. It's significant, and it is intense, and it has been happening over time. So nobody can right now, nobody, even if they have attempted, they have not been able to successfully change the scenario where eve teasing and catcalling has stopped. And how media plays a role is that when there are festivals happening, uh, the way they construct the festival as a site of only women, talking only about women's beauty standards, what eventually happens is, when you're showing beauty standards, there's this another element to it, which is about the access to resources to meet those beauty standards, which means there's an economic standard to it, and again, which divides groups of people into different economic classes. So that was very interesting for me when I was doing that interview. And I remember, ma'am, you were saying that bring in the economic element to it as well, because and I was not then very sure of how do I bring that element. But as I'm doing these interviews, I'm finding that there is a huge economic element to it, which divides certain groups of people into certain classes. The methodology is mostly actually secondary research, because my first two cases, which is witch hunting and the molestation case, those two are based on newspaper clippings, social media coverage, and digital media coverage, and civil society organization reports. But the festivals as a site of sexual harassment, I'm taking in-depth interviews, because I realize that it is not going to be meaningful if I only depend on some newspaper reports, because festival per se as a site is only covered for that particular day. It doesn't have a lot of elaboration to it. So to understand the nuances of it, I have to go to the community. So since I am from Guwahati University, I did a snowball sampling approach. I mean, I used a snowball sampling approach where I had reached out to my department professors, and they supported me in identifying some of the participants who agreed to be a part of this process. I think I've already mentioned the working themes. Language as a tool to reinforce gender norms and morality in women, systemic structures, practices, behavior that contribute to victim blaming and gender ignorance, and culture of silence. So when I say culture of silence, like I mentioned, survival of the fittest, teasing is reciprocal. I'm going to elaborate more on these in the paper. And I'm sure also that there are further themes that are going to emerge, but this is as I'm working on it. So my intention, because eventually also I want to do my research on a topic like this, I want to bring in Judith Butler's gender performances and how that reinforces a certain understanding of feminism or gender, and Foucault's power relations and surveillance of gender behavior and disciplinary action. I want to bring in these concepts. So yeah, so this is what, and this is how my paper hopefully is going to develop into. Thank you.
Very, very sharp and very focused presentation, but I would like you to also include the technology, right? That how technology is magnifying the pain and also gives a prominence. Once you like sub your photograph or your this thing, as you gave the example of cleavage, it's always going to be there. It's there in social media, no? So the damage which is done, that lady, even after 20, 30, 40 years, she will, this becomes a recorded thing. It's very
Right.
different from the kind of harassment we were facing when we were in college or this. It was an episodic. And once that episode is over, and if somebody reminds you, you even forget, because we all grew up facing street uh, harassment in personal life, how we grew up hearing the stories of incest and uh, this thing, even in private domain, as children. But that is, it just goes away, once you are in a different system, different atmosphere. But once it is there in a social media or
The
in,
digital footprint, no?
yeah, so that footprint will always remain.
Right, right. Yes.
How, like you may take action against Google or Facebook and
Hmm.
all this. Somewhere there are so many
Yes.
media, it will always be used against you. Not only blackmail, but it is a devastating experience. And that is why so many young people, young girls and boys are committing suicide when they are
Hmm.
blackmailed.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
videos are circulated on MMS. And I think that aspect needs to be brought in.
Yeah, I'll add this, because yes, it is a very important point. I especially digital footprint and the trauma that they have to relive every time,
Yeah.
that they come across it. So yeah, okay.
Plus
I'll-
damaging their career, damaging their opportunities, damaging their
Ah,
this thing, the access to education, career, job, everything, to get jeopardized. It's a completely ruining your, like in our times, if such thing happened in your city, you would change the city, go away somewhere else and start fresh. Now it's not possible because it's there. in a
Correct.
public domain all over the world, people can watch it, no? And it can be used.
Yeah. Okay.
And AI also, AI is going to, of course. Thank you. It's very good. All presentations are so powerful.
Thank you.
We are going to do an essay, huh, for
Yes.
the anthology. Yeah. You can
Yes.
go up to even 5,000-6,000. No problem. The minimum
Right
is
now it
37
is
minutes.
becoming to already in, I have not even reached the first case ending. It's already 1500 or something. So I'm
No,
thinking,
no problem. You can go up to that 5,000.
all
It's a,
right.
because you have to give a like total scenario, no?
Huh.
Complete analysis and no,
Okay.
no.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Antaraji. Next up, we have Shrutiji. Shrutiji, if you could please go ahead. Shrutiji, are you able to? Yeah, okay.
Mm, Good evening to all the participants, and good evening to Vibhuti ma'am. I am presenting a paper on life course trauma and the mental health related to the psychological impact of gender-based violence, and how it influence the public policy implementation and the formulation in India. So basically what I really presenting real life experiences of a young girl child and a adult, how it is the events happened in the childhood affect their adulthood more in terms of their work, in terms of their career, in terms of choosing a partner or having the future planning. So this is related to that thing, and it is some kind based upon the personal events as well. So the thing is that my second slide related to the understanding life course trauma and how it is
It is
affected
in
by the
working
gen.
mode. Can you make it slideshow mode as it is? Your font size is very small.
Okay. Is it visible, ma'am?
Yes.
Yeah. So we always talked about trauma, and when we approach to the counseling persons or any psychologist, so they really ask how is your experience and from where you are getting the traumas. So we put in the dilemma and think about the particular event, but we don't have idea that that comes we taking the baggage from our childhood onwards. If sometimes our parents give slap on our faces in front of so many peoples, at that point of time we can't think about it as in perspective, we take it as a very lightly. But same thing when people make fun of those things will become traumas, and then those small event will change into the habitual thing more often. And in some cases when I read about case studies, so when a background is mentioned, it is mentioned that particular person or particular a male counterpart is having the issue of battering, or either they battered in his childhood, or they observe somebody and try to do the same thing in repetition. So this is the types of gender based violence we usually see, such as the domestic abuse, which in domestic abuse we also have the verbal abuse, like to using the cursing words very freely. And child marriages are also there, workplace harassment is also there. Sometimes when somebody posts any pictures, or which is not appropriates in others people views, so people start trolling, so that also called the same. In the frameworks, I am presenting 3 to 4 models, but here I presented the 2. The first one is the ecological model by the World Health Organization, related to the individual, then rationality, then how it is affected by the community, and what are the social factors. And in order to, understanding the woman's perspective, so there is a framework of Lenore Walker's framework of the cycle of violence, which she presented in the paper of the battered woman, where she, explained that it is start from the honeymoon phase, then tension is rising, then violence is happening, then salvation is also there in order to say sorry and apologies, and the same cycle is in on the repetition. And there is another theories related to the trauma theories also there. Then there is a life experiencing theories also there in the psychology subfields. So I am using those theories in order to present my like outcomes which I am in the present life. Then if we see what are the countdown, basically it is related to the anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, that sometimes while taking the counseling, people or the concerned psychologists ask, do you have the suicidal tendencies more often, how much? So it also rise question that why due to some childhood traumas often lead to suicide. And currently, like in my arena where I am living, last year I have witnessed two young girls suicide because of some anxiety, because they are battered by their families. So the real life situations are increasing. As Dr. Padma already earlier shared, that there are 29%, 29.3% of women who reported domestic violence. But there is a one in only 10, women who seek mental support, because still, whether woman is independent or being a homemaker, and if they are in a relation which is related to hampering their mental health, often think about whether she wants to share these things to a person or not. If a person is if she to whom she is sharing, so either a person is a judgmental or be a empathetic, so she should always in dilemma whether she should share such things in order to be in a peaceful environment or not. And there is a particular thing like I also want to explain through the existing policies in the case of India. Yes, we do have the protection of women for from Domestic Violence Act, POSH Act, One Stop Centers, Nirbhaya Fund, but still there are limitations which stopping us to reconcile our mental peace more. Because I don't so that there is not an awareness, but still the perceptions of what people say is hampering the limitations. Plus there are persons who are in trauma, but due to the lack of awareness about the mental health scenarios, they are not accepting it, because acceptance is not come very frequently. But it took time. Yes, I have been, or I have faced such kind of situations in my childhood which is hampering my adulthood. And there is also lack of agency coordination, because sometimes it is also mentioned in some of the newspaper clippings when we are talked about mental health, that yes, sometimes whosoever is our mentor in terms of mental health counseling, they are not empathetic. Rather they are very judgmental, or giving some particular nuskas which a person or any elder giving to us. So I, through the flow chart, I try to, uh, explain that there are frameworks, and implementation is also there, but that also brings the gaps and changes. My last slide is also there. Yes, of the gender-based violence. So there is a informed trauma thing is there, where because of any judgment or not because of any judgment, a person should be judged. Rather, empathetic behavior is also there. Though we have NGOs, healthcare centers, and law enforcement, but awareness is also there, because sometimes we thought, yes, we are, doing lot of awareness nowadays, but still it is not reaching to that particular person who needs the most. And I really want to end this small presentation with this quote, that healing from violence requires more than safety. It demands recognition, empathy, and a sustained public commitment. And what I have tried to use as a theoretical work, I explained in the end, that yes, there is an individual which has their interpersonal personality, community from personality, he or she needs supports in order to be a peaceful person. And policy will be very much beneficial if considerations of that particular person or whosoever is you know um, whosoever is suffering from that particular thing give their inputs more. And society have to change the outlook. Because of policies we can change the outlook of how we can take mental health or the peaceful mindset of the things more frequently without any judgment. So thank you and for giving me this opportunity.
Shruti Sharma ji, you will have to also say that this analysis is based on my personal journey and then corroborated by the literature that I have gone through and try to weave whatever I have gone through in terms of trauma. I'm trying to put it in an analytical framework. So at the outset, you can say that. So your research methodology becomes it's an insider's view. You can call it in research, it is called insider's view. So you can declare that. So that sorts you out so far as the ethical side of things.
Thank you, ma'am. Because I also, because I am using the mix, method in for my, research work. So I have whosoever is working in the mental health field, and they are basically works with the adolescents, girls more, and the women, a common woman, whosoever it's dealing with the violence coming from the marriages or coming from their parental homes without marriages. So I have got some insight because of the things people have the depression,
So you can also like the
anxiety
report
at a
which I
great
have,
level.
the,
And to
yeah,
be
the report which I have shared here in the chat box, you can download it. That is also very good. It's a mixed matter. And both the quantitative and qualitative analysis and the mental health dimension is also covered in the report. So that will also how to organize your material. That's very good. That will give you the idea. Anuradha Kapoor's
okay, ma'am.
recent study, which was released just this week only. So that is there in the chat. That see. But please go ahead, guys. It's a good
Yeah,
work.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Others.
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you, Shruti ji. Next, I would like to request Praniti ji to please go ahead with the presentation.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Pranati. I made a poster for today's creative assignment. Let me just share my screen.
What is your background?
Is it visible?
No, poster is not visible.
No, we can't see it yet. Yeah, it's uploading.
Prabanti. Yeah.
Yes, we can see now.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to use today's platform to talk about something that is rarely talked about, which is the economic injustice or economic violence perpetrated against women, especially in rural communities. Economic violence in women, especially in rural communities, is more than just denying them of money or profits, is completely taking away the autonomy which they present in the business structures. This is not just limited to denying women property, but it's also denying her the right to make financial decisions or own productive assets or access even opportunities for enterprises. It is when women they contribute to a business, but they don't have a say in the management. And whatever the income which is earned by the labor, she can't call it as her own, and it is completely put in the name of her husband. And also there is no platform for her to get investments or even business ideas or entrepreneurial access because a lack of information about the same and lack of education. The case of economic violence against rural businesswomen is deeply structural. In many rural economies, the women's business participation begins with family enterprises or Jodi system, and it begins as collective labor, where because of the traditional gender norms, their roles are defined as supportive roles, rather than leadership or managerial roles. And they're often seen as an extension of domestic duty, but not as a completely different employment or profession. And the lack of asset ownership remains the main cause. Without any title land, the women cannot access loans, they cannot be part of government schemes, and this sidelines the whole legal and financial part of the business. Even the inheritance systems, which is customary in many rural communities, all the property is in the name of the husband, so they can neither access the schemes of the government which gives credit system for entrepreneurs or small businesses, nor can they get credit in the streamlined credit systems. And secondly, financial illiteracy and limited digital access also hampers their growth as business people. Women are mostly illiterate, so they cannot read banking documents or navigate through credit systems, and they become dependent on their male counterparts to conduct these transactions. So they don't have this autonomy of their own, where they can conduct the financial transactions on their own. And even in the social level, unpaid domestic work and just gender bias, it further limits their opportunities. A woman normally she spends like hours of work or unpaid care, and she doesn't have time or energy to develop her own enterprise. And also, women who cannot travel or expand her scope cannot scale her business. And there's always a societal stigma of a woman, especially in rural communities, of a woman doing a business on her of her own. And all these come under economic violence perpetrated against women. And the consequences of this violence are not just for rural women, but as our community as a whole. For women entrepreneurs, lack of financial control translates directly into lack of growth. Without access to credit or capital, business remains small and informal. And due to this lack of scaling of the business, they can't access many stuff which are available for huge large businesses. And in India, especially in rural communities, these businesses are confined to very basic roles like tailoring, food, or handicrafts. At community level, the exclusion of women from meaningful businesses leads to less diverse local economies. Fewer women-led ventures mean fewer innovations in rural supply chains. Fewer employees, weaker network of mentorship for future entrepreneurs as well. This is total economic inefficiency, even looking at it from an economic perspective rather than a social perspective. It is lack of utilization of already existing resources, which leads to breakdown of the economy at a rural level. From even a purely business perspective, it is a loss of capital, talent, and productivity. Research shows that women reinvest 90% of their income into their family and communities, while men reinvest into businesses. So even the societal norms stop women from reinvesting whatever the profits or income that they get into the business themselves because of the restrictions that women hold against themselves in these scenarios. In rural markets, basically the employment is micro or small enterprises, and these sole proprietorship provides employment only to the women and their family. So in this process, the man becomes head of the business, while the woman just takes the role of an employee in that business. Even though she supplied them with labor, she supplied them with innovative ideas, with the capital necessary and necessary property, yet she is reduced to a role of an employee. And even in further scenarios where she wishes to leave the business enterprise, taking her share with her, there is nothing for her to take back from the business enterprise because of the lack of documentation in her name. These opportunity to participate in businesses, they lose, even the communities lose the collaboration of women. And it's not a gender issue as such, it's a human development issue, when the government should take up initiatives to empower these women through certain uh, projects or schemes where women are told that such violence exists against them. Because in rural communities, as far as I've researched, violence, according to these women, is just physical, even not mental or economic. So the women themselves will acknowledge the violence they perpetrated against them in economic sense, where they denied their rightful share in businesses. Governments must explicitly recognize economic control and deprive as form of gender-based violence. Property, inheritance, and land laws must be enforced to guarantee women co-ownership and ownership rights. In rural cooperatives and enterprises, policies should mandate joint internship and equal representation for women members. Banks, microfinance agencies, and government agriculture departments must also adopt this approach of mandating co-ownership when there's women also present in the business. And rural financial systems must be redesigned to work for women, like creating collateral free loans or flexible payment models, and especially digital literacy programs can help make the financial instruments more accessible to women at large. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
So I think you need to talk about, when you talk about financial violence, it is not only head of the household or male members of the family not giving you equal resources, no, whenever in the intra-household distribution of resources, but also systemic and structural violence, not considering banks not giving loans to women and calling that which is, you don't have credit worthiness, or the government schemes only giving farmers card or the you know, identity card only to male farmers, or land rights not being it. These are the structural and systemic violence also, which takes away agency of women, and that puts them in the bottom of the pyramid. So you have to talk about the economic violence in the public domain, and that percolates in the family also. So the interaction of the personal domain and public domain, both of them, they perpetuate and superimpose the patriarchal power in the male bias, no, when it comes to economic rights of women. So you should also bring in, otherwise everything happens that it's a man versus woman. No, the whole patriarchal systems and structures, they conspire against women and don't allow them to come up in the business, don't give them any entitlement, don't give them basic rights such as land or resources or credit or market, right? Because forward and markets are also controlled by uh, gender imbalance, whether it is a product market or sector market or labor market, all of them are socially constructed to perpetuate male domination and marginalization of women. And the whole ideology of women being treated as a supplementary earner takes away their agency. Even if how much work you do, you will always remain in the informal sector. You will not get even less than even minimum wages of the state. See the example of Asha workers and Anganwadi workers in the rural areas. No? What are they? Though they are employed by the state, they are what they get is honorary. They don't get the wages. So it is the structures and systems which perpetuate the male domination and subordination of women in the economic arena, and in the family also. The whole concept of head of the household, that also marginalizes when in terms of business.
Yes,
You can
ma'am.
use some macro data also, that why only 8% of women are in the enterprise and what is their capacity to invest between 50,000 to 1 lakh. You can read all the articles by some people. She has given all the statistics in this. So you can start with the macro picture, review of literature, and come down. So you are going to make only poster presentation.
Yes, ma'am. Today it's
Okay,
only
so
possible.
in the poster, you will have to bring systemic, structural, and violence, and also violence in the economic violence in the personal domain. So both in public and private domain, that you will have to. Otherwise, it becomes only man versus woman.
Okay, ma'am. I'll make sure to add that.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
So, yeah, systemic and structural violence. It's systemic and structural economic violence in the public domain and gender subordination in the private.
Thank you so much,
Very
ma'am.
good. Yeah, you have designed it very well, put in such a rich content in one poster. It's a Herculean task. Yes.
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you, Pranati ji. Next, I would like to request Ranjan Solanki ji to please go ahead. I think Ranjan ji just dropped out. In the meanwhile, ma'am, then I'll present Meghna ji's recorded presentation that they've shared with us.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Meghna, and my presentation today is titled The Silence Within the Home. When we speak about gender-based violence, our attention often turns outward to the street, the workplace, the stranger. But the most enduring and normalized form of violence occurs within our home, a space society calls sacred, yet one that hides centuries of unspoken pain. My research asks a very difficult question. Why does the law go silent when violence wears the face of marriage? I study how consent and autonomy, concepts central to equality, disappear once a woman crosses the threshold of marriage. My project combines legal analysis, feminist theory, and theories of intersectionality to understand how the law continues to privilege patriarchy and how that silence continues to echo in the lives of women across caste, class, religion, and sexuality. In other words, this work is about what happens when the Constitution promises equality, but the home denies it. Section 63 of the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita says that sexual intercourse by a husband with his wife cannot be considered rape. This isn't the relic of the past. This is the law of our present. It assumes that marriage implies a lifelong, irrevocable consent. It assumes that once a woman says, I do, she cannot say no. The words harmony, sanctity, tradition, they sound beautiful, but they've always been used to silence generations of women. I call this the legal silence. A silence written not in the absence of law, but in its very language. Through feminist jurisprudence, we see how the silence is political. The law does not merely reflect patriarchy, it enforces it. It draws a line around the home and says, justice stops here. My research also asks what happens when constitutional rights like Article 15, 14, 21 end where marital rape begin. What happens when the state protects the institution of marriage more fiercely than the individuals within it? What kind of justice are we really preserving? Law's silence becomes loudest in the stories of those who try to break it. These incidents are not isolated incidents, they are patterned injustices. Gender-based violence does not happen in a vacuum, and caste determines whose pain is believed. Class determines who can leave. Religion influences who get blamed, and sexuality shapes who is even recognized by the law. Through intersectionality, we learn that the experience of violence is never singular. It is shaped by structures that intersect, by social hierarchies that multiply vulnerability. My work, therefore, is not just about gender, it is about the architecture of inequality itself. Behind theory and law are the stark numbers, numbers that make silence visible. Studies show that 82% of women in India report experiencing sexual violence from their husbands, but fewer than 1% ever approach the police. The gap between experience and reporting isn't a coincidence, it is the cost of silence. These graphs show how marital rape remains hidden beneath phrases like conjugal rights or marital duty. For Dalit and Adivasi women, this silence is multiplied by caste and poverty. For Muslim and working class women, it's reinforced by stigma and dependency. For queer women, the silence comes from the law itself because their relationships are not even fully recognized. The data does not simply measure violence, it measures disbelief. Each number here stands for a story never told, a complaint never filed, a door never opened. This is what it means when we say the silence within the home is systemic. If silence can be learned, then so can speech. To move forward, we must begin with a simple recognition. Consent is not a cultural threat, it is a constitutional right. What we need in India is not only new laws, but a new imagination of justice, one that treats the home as a part of the republic, not an exception to it. Equality cannot be partial, autonomy cannot be conditional, consent cannot depend on marital status. When the law refuses to hear, society must learn to speak. When the policy is slow, poetry, activism, and research must fill the silence. Real change moves at three levels: legal, institutional, and education. First, repeal Section 63. Let marriage stop being a license. Let consent breathe within it. Second, the system. Train police, judges, doctors to hear what women have always been saying. Third, education. Teach consent in classrooms. Teach equality at home. Teach people that love is not ownership. Prevention begins before punishment. The silence within the home is not an emptiness, it is evidence. It tells us how deeply patriarchy is written into our laws, our codes, and our daily language of love and duty. But it also tells us something else. Silence is not eternal, it can be broken. Ending gender based violence means not just criminalizing acts, it's humanizing voices. It means recognizing that consent is not a privilege granted by marriage, it is a birthright guaranteed by our constitution. And it means building a world where dignity does not depend on a man's permission. As Kimberly Crenshaw said, if you're standing in the path of if you're standing in the path of multiple forms of exclusion, you can't just walk through one door of justice. My hope is that my work opens many doors, legal, social, and emotional, so that justice can finally step inside the home. Thank you.
Thank you, Meghnaji. Yours a very powerful and strongly worded presentation. I would just suggest that in your essay, you should also do the analysis and the critical reflection of some of the landmark cases, and also the role of family court, no? Because marital rape has been taken up by family court through new route. It may not be under the law on rape, under the criminal law, but in the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005 also covers economic, emotional, psychological, physical, and sexual violence. So in that also, so many women have used that recourse. So I think that needs to be there. When you talk about the Atrocity Act and the violence against Dalit women, I think some of the landmark cases, especially the Priyanka Bhutmande case, where thousands of Dalit women and the human rights activists mobilized consistently. And from the time it was, everything was suppressed and no, the criminal justice system was not doing anything. From there, because of the continuous public pressure, they had to punish the culprits. So most of the family members of her were killed. But the elderly father, he was there to see that the justice is done to Priyanka Bhutmande. So I think that is also very important, that how grassroots pressure pressure of the community creates the road to justice. That if you do that, that will be complete, because what is top down is one thing, but bottom up efforts also need to be included. That gives us hope in the hopeless situation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. This sums up today's valedictory session and follow up with the presentation session. With this, I now invite you to please share your closing remarks for this program now, since this is our last day.
So I think we are extremely grateful to all our resource persons who have put their heart and soul into the presentation, such a robust presentation. And you people are lucky that you also got a lot of attention because of your own very proactive approach. The quality of essays and the ideas that you have shared today, that itself shows that you are very, very serious and committed. Some of you are already involved in the work of providing support to the survivors of violence. And the curation of this course, I think both Priyanka and myself, we did a lot of thinking, and we saw to it that in this cohort, we focused more on what is the solution, what is the way forward, what kind of strategies. And I think right from the very first lecture by, say, Albertina, which showed what is the legal recourse we can have and what over last 50 years women's rights movement has done, right from 1975, where we got the equal women, where during the International Women's Year, so many new rules and caveats that came in the existing law. And we also had capable moving to very comprehensively showed how what are the different strategies of collective efforts, and also the networking. The presentations by Dr. Sangeeta Reddy on trafficking was mind-boggling. Dr. Amal Jesani's presentation on ethical dimensions and what the medical public health system has to do in terms of social determinants of the violence, unless you accept that, you can't find the strategies, and public health system has a major role to play in case of violence, both mental and physical violence. WHO guidelines also have mandated that violence against women is not a personal problem of an individual, it is a social problem, it is a public health problem, and women's rights are human rights, has been accepted like way back in 1993, Vienna Congress of United Nations Human Rights Council. And we also saw the one-stop crisis model, one-stop crisis center model, which was very uh, comprehensively and with first-hand experience, Dr. Sanjita Arora explained to us. And we also had the Altamash Khan, who gave a man's responsibility for to combat violence against women, the young man talking. So with so much of commitment on the gender-based violence, he's not only the platitude, but he's actually involved at ground level. So I think we have a very good team of resource persons, and that has given us a rounded uh, understanding of the issue. And you also have uh, responded in a very, very productive, creative, and theoretically and enlightened way. So we are happy that our efforts have come to fruition, and the whole journey of starting with the ideological understanding, conceptual clarity, analytical rigor, approaches to gender-based violence, top-down approaches and bottom-up approaches, all both we have discussed, because prevention of sexual harassment is the employer's responsibility, it's the top-down. But at the same time, at the ground level, so many things that are happening, so many efforts are made. They are the ways of hope. We know statistics are mind-boggling, statistics are devastating. Also, the intensity and number of cases that we are finding, the newer and newer forms of technology aided gender-based violence against that. But at the same time, there are so many incremental victories we have at the ground level. I think that gives us hope, and let us amplify the voices of those who are fighting for justice. So we don't get overpowered and have a paralysis that nothing can be done. China is not a luxury. There is no alternative. It's not a luxury. We all have to start wherever we are. And I congratulate all the fellows and thank all the research persons and my heartfelt appreciation of the IMPRI team for this Herculean task And now I think we will be moving towards publication of event outcome report and methodology. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your kind words. And with this, I would like to proceed forward to the formal conclusion with the formal vote of thanks as we conclude the 8th day of this fellowship program, Ending Gender-Based Violence Fellowship, Cohort 2.0, themed Strategic Responses Towards Zero Tolerance for Gender-Based Violence. I, Priyanka Negi, on behalf of the IMPRI Gender Impact Studies Center, GISC, extend my heartfelt gratitude. We sincerely thank our chair and esteemed expert, Professor Vibhuti Patel and Dr. Padma Deosthali for their invaluable contributions and for engaging us in a powerful discussion. We're also deeply thankful to all the experts who have engaged with us throughout this fellowship and enriched our understanding with their insightful discussions. A big thank you to all our participants for their presentations and engagement today. Your active participation and curiosity enrich our discussions and make this a meaningful learning experience. The session recordings and resources will be shared via email. Video recording of today's session will be available for reference. We'll also be sharing a feedback form that you can fill out and post the feedback form. These certificates will be provided to you via email. We look forward to staying connected and seeing you again in the next cohort or at future IMPRI events. If you are following our work by watching it on YouTube, listening via podcast, or reading our publications, we truly appreciate your engagement and support. Once again, thank you all for being a part of this initiative. Wishing everybody a very good evening.
Thanks.